Hello, Alejandra.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, Claudia. Hello, John.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Very good, thank you.
Hi, Claudia.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear. Hi, Mary. How are you?
Hello.
Okay, let's wait a couple of minutes for the rest of the people.
Okay.
Okay. Claudia and Alejandra, as I told you, no, we are going to allow John and his wife to speak first. They're going to introduce themselves. No, they already listened to your audios and your videos. Okay? No, so
Okay.
pay good attention. Write down all the questions that you might have. No, he's going to give you some instructions and things. Okay? No, okay, here are the rest. Okay. Hello, David.
Hello, Ernesto. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Hello, Giuliana.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Hello.
Hi, Alejandra. Hi, John. Hi, Mary. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Hi, very good.
Hi.
Okay, here is Zulay. Hello, Zulay. Carlota, how are you?
Hi, everyone. I am fine. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we only have, the only one missing is Ana Maria, but she'll be with us pretty soon, okay? So I guess I'm going to give John to the opportunity to talk. He's a very good friend of mine from a very long time ago. No? And his beautiful wife, they have been married only for 2 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks. No? So please, students, pay good attention to them. Okay? The accent and all that. They are purely British. All right? Okay, Mr. John, all yours.
Ok, Ernesto, después de esta introducción voy a comenzar en español. Es porque una cosa me parece muy importante en este foro. Yo aprendí mi español hablando, no en una escuela, sino hablando. Si yo quería jugar fútbol con mis amigos, tenía que hablar español. Entonces, para mí es muy obvio y muy importante que uno no tenga vergüenza en hacer preguntas o hablar, porque yo comencé hablando español con 6 años y no tenía esa vergüenza que uno tiene en los años más adultos. Entonces es muy importante para mí que si ustedes no entienden algo y tienen una pregunta, si están perdiendo un poco el contexto, por favor, avísenos, no tengan vergüenza, porque el objetivo de este foro es aprender un poco. Entonces, por eso te lo digo en español, para que estoy muy claro que a nosotros dos, Mary también entiende muy bien español. Ella aprendió en la escuela, habla un poco lento, pero entiende todo. Y por eso estoy hablando con vosotros en primero en español. Entonces, ahora voy a cambiar a inglés. Pero
Okay.
en cualquier momento que quieren parar o si no entienden algo, por favor, es solamente decirnos. So, hi guys, I'm John.
And I'm Mary.
We live in Southeast London. I'm going to tell you a funny story to start. And that story is about your professor, Ernesto. Ernesto and I met each other. I know we both look way too young for this to be possible, but we first met in 1976. And Ernesto and me, we were both at the English school in Bogota. And this is going to surprise you all, I'm sure. And that is that we had a little disagreement on the playground. Ernesto wasn't in my class, but we're in the school, and we had a fight. Now, when I say a fight, I'm talking about the kind of fight you have when you're 10 years old, which feels like you're Muhammad Ali, but actually it was probably just a little shout and a little push and you walk away, but it's the end of the world for you.
Yeah.
I then left and went to Rio de Janeiro. And I arrived in the school there, which was called the British School in Rio. And you're arriving in a new school and people are looking at you, you're making your way, you're trying to make your impression. And some guy said to me, so where are you from? I said, I'm English, but I've arrived from Colombia. And they said to me, oh, we have another guy here from Colombia over there. And I looked across the playground, and across the playground was the same guy that I had the small fight in Colombia in the school. And it was Ernesto. Mm-hmm. And we became very good friends from that moment on. There was no more fights. We played football together, which we both enjoyed a lot. Ernesto was a good player and quite passionate. His Italian roots came out when he played football, quite that Latin temper. But it was a good times in Rio with Ernesto. Now, I did say to you guys at the beginning that if you didn't understand anything, or if you didn't understand the context of what we were talking about, that you should please say. However, the interesting thing about me being bilingual is that you realize that there are some words that you can't translate. And I find that actually quite interesting about our language. And to give you an example, in Spanish, if you use the word madrugar, there is no translation to English for madrugar. And quite often for me, it's interesting when you think about how these words came around. Where did they come from? And I think another word, for example, is sobremesa. In English, there is no word for sobremesa, but when you think about the culture, the Latin culture is quite interesting because the Latin culture is very much centered around family and sitting around a table after dinner, talking to people. I'm sure some of you now have become aware of the somewhat different culture, certainly in the United States, of eating, which is as much and as fast as possible and move on. And for that reason, I think a word like sobremesa didn't even need to exist in English. And likewise, I was talking to Ernesto earlier, there are words in English that I hope I don't use, and then you ask me to translate for you, because there is also no translation. And one which is quite interesting is, if you did ask me to translate a word from English to Spanish, it could be quite awkward. And awkward is a word that has no translation from English to Spanish. Complicado, difícil, but there is no direct translation. So guys, go easy when you actually want to ask me questions about a certain word, because if I can't translate it, maybe it's not because I don't know it, it doesn't exist. I noticed that Ana Reyes has just joined the forum. And when I was telling you the story about me and Ernesto, in 1977, for two guys to have been in the same school in both Colombia and then in Rio was very, very unusual. The world was a much bigger place. It was unusual for people to move around the world. Now the world is much smaller. And to give you an example, Ana Maria Reyes told us that she works for Credit Corp in her introduction. And my wife, Mary, has a friend who works in Credit Corp in Lima. And Mary and I went to her wedding in Lima. And it goes to show you how small the world actually is.
Incredible.
And And indeed, if you look at the industry that Mary and I work in, which is the financial markets, it's actually a very small world. You all get to know each other very quickly. And most conversations around dinner are trying to work out how many people you know between you within the financial markets. It also, to me, opens up just how small the world is now. When I look at the people who are employed, for example, in my last employer, we had people from all over the world, from Australia, from New Zealand, from Colombia, from Argentina, from all corners of the world, all making their way in London. And indeed, Mary works in an emerging markets bank. And once again, you know, a multitude of colleagues from all over the world. And so I'm going to explain very briefly what I do. And then Mary will explain what she does. And the importance of language in what we do. And certainly in the markets that we work in, without English, you really, unfortunately, have no chance. It's a shame. I'm also fluent in Portuguese, and I've only really come across one person in financial markets that actually didn't speak English, and he was the chairman of CaixaBank in Portugal. And I guess he didn't feel he needed to actually speak English, but I'm sure that the more modern CaixaBank now realize that they do. So I grew up first in India, in Bombay, as a very young boy. From Bombay, we moved to Bogota. I arrived in Bogota when I was 6 years old, and we stayed in Bogota until I was 12. From Bogota, we went to Rio, and we spent 4 years in Rio. Although for the last year, I had the most wonderful life where I was in a boarding school in England. And for those of you that don't know, a boarding school is where you sleep. So you're boarding at the school. I think it's internado is the translation. So boarding school. It's quite unusual. It's very unusual in the rest of the world. It's quite a normal thing in the UK, in England, to go to boarding school. I spent my school terms at a boarding school in England, and I would then fly back to Rio for my holidays. It was really a perfect life, if I'm honest, at that time. And then my parents moved back to England, to Cambridge, north of London, and I then moved with them. I did my studies at Cambridge, although I'll hasten to add that unlike Ernesto, who has a brain the size of Colombia, I didn't go to university in Cambridge. I did some basic studies and then moved into the world of work. I met someone and eventually got married, and their family worked in the motor trade. The motor trade is the car trade. So they had car garages. So buying and selling cars, repairing cars. And I spent some time there working whilst I planned what I wanted to do with my life. And 10 years later, I was still there. And I got to 30 years old and realized that maybe I didn't want to be working with cars and with family, my wife's family, all my life, and made a decision to try and do something different. And so at 30 years old, I spoke to my brother. My brother at the time was working for Banamex, the Mexican bank. He was a trader in Spanish government bonds. There were bonos at the time, they were called bonos. And I asked him what he thought about my chances in finance. And his response was not particularly positive because A, I was already 30 years old, which is quite late to try and start in finance. And B, I wasn't a university graduate, which then was a barrier to entry. Now it's almost impossible, I would say, to make it in financial markets when you're not a graduate. But I was reasonably confident, and he managed to get me interviews with two brokers. Brokers are intermediaries who stand between people buying and selling and making a small commission. He managed to get me interviews with two different firms. And surprisingly, both of them offered me a job. The first interview was actually all day. It was actually to work on the desk of the Spanish peseta, government bond desk and corporate bond desk. And I had an advantage in that I spoke Spanish. None of the other people on the desk spoke Spanish. The second interview was with a company called Liberty at the time, Liberty Brokers. And it's probably the most bizarre interview I've ever had in my life. I went into the interview and I met this huge American guy. He had a nose like this, all broken from boxing. And he took my CV and he ignored everything else, and he went to the hobbies and interests. And at that time, I was playing American football in the UK, and I was the #1 rated quarterback. He looked at this, and I promise you, he said to me, "How much do you want?" Those were his first words to me. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're a quarterback, you're a leader of people, you are the type of people I need in my team. How much do you want?" I gave him a number. He said, "You're done." And I walked away, and the other firm also offered me a job. It was actually for less money. But of the two jobs, when you're making a career change at 30 years old, it's probably good to do something where you have an advantage. And the other job involved my Spanish, where I felt I had an advantage. And so I took that job. I worked in the European bond market for 6 years, for 5 years, and then moved into emerging markets. These are markets which I don't want to insult Colombia, but Colombia is classed as an emerging market, a developing market, as is most of Latin America, along with Asia and some of Eastern Europe. For me, it was a baptism of fire. I don't know if you understand that, about bautismo de fuego. It's an English saying which means you have instead of water when you're baptized, you have fire. It was because I took on the emerging market desk just before two very big crises in the world. One was the Asian bond crisis, and the other was the Russian bond crisis. These were really, really huge. Sorry?
In what year are you talking about?
1997 was the Asia crisis, and this led to 1998, which is when Russia defaulted on its local debt. These were huge market events in emerging markets, which actually affected markets worldwide. For me, it was a great time, because as a broker, volatility in markets is great for you because it means people are buying and selling. So my clients were all buying and selling, and we were having a great time, although my clients were not having such a good time. I then moved into the European markets as the euro was looking to become the currency, and as the markets developed towards the euro, and spent another 2 years as a broker in euros. But then during my time as a broker, I met two guys who were running a small asset manager. So a fund manager, this is un gestor de fondos. They were starting a new company. It was called Blue Bay. And they asked me to come in and run their trading business, which I did. And I spent 18 years with them. They've grown to be one of the most important emerging market fund managers in the world. It's quite incredible to watch two men build something from zero, and in 9 years, that something be worth 1 billion sterling, which is $1.6 billion. So from zero, these two guys worked and built something that they sold for $1.6 billion. And it was an amazing time for me to watch this happen. Luckily, I was involved, and it gave me a great fun. and also, a nice life. I left Blue Bay about 18 months ago, maybe a little less, because I wanted to start an idea that I had in financial markets, which is to outsource. Now, I don't know, Ernesto, how would you translate outsource? Maybe in Spanish you just say outsource, but I don't know.
No, it's a term that we use.
Outsourcing.
Outsourcing it's a Spanglish, yeah?
Tercerizar.
How do you say it?
A lot of words in the financial markets tend to be the English word with the Spanish. I remember when I first started trading peseta bonds, and I was very junior, and there was a girl called Ana Arias, and she worked in Banco Santander. And I said to her one day, I said, Ana, I'm a bit confused. I said, how do you say in Spanish the words bid, which is when you're a buyer, and offer, when you're a seller? She said, it's very easy, bid the offer. And I was like, okay. So I understood reasonably quickly that there's quite a lot of Spanglish in the financial markets. And so I'm now trying to build this idea for a new company. Unfortunately, we've had a little setback in the name of COVID-19, which has created problems for everybody. And so it's very difficult to get anybody in financial markets to focus on a new idea. And I guess I'm waiting until the world recovers from this terrible situation that we're in. When that will be, I don't know. But in the meantime, it's given me some free time to do some other family stuff that Mary and I are working on. So what I'll do now, I'll hand you over to Mary and let her explain how she got involved in financial markets and how great I am.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to do something I don't usually do, and that is I'm going to disagree with John on something that he said.
Oh my goodness.
Earlier on, he said that you can't operate in our industry unless you have English. It's a prerequisite. I would argue that in our business, you actually have to learn a whole new language to function. So some of the words he said there, bid, offer, to the average person in the world, these words don't really mean a lot. I think people are aware of what a bond is and they have some vague idea of finance, but actually to operate, you do have to learn a whole new language. It's quite interesting that I work with people, my colleagues are people based all over the world, in various countries in Africa, in Asia, around Europe, in America and South America. And I think the most interesting person I've come across is a Chinese guy who works in our Beijing office, who I interact with regularly, but he speaks no English. Our interaction is purely on the computer, and it's 100% using finance words. So he's a trader and I'm a salesperson. And generally, I want to ask him for prices for bonds, prices at which my clients can buy and sell things. And I use the standard language to ask him for that price. He replies in numbers, and I say done, which is a universal word in our market. And he says thanks without knowing any English. He knows to say thanks when a trade is done and the trade gets booked. And every single day we interact, but he actually speaks no English. So if you called him, he would only be able to interact in Mandarin. So that's quite interesting. So I will rewind a little bit. My early life was not nearly as interesting as John's. I was born and bred in London to two parents who both came to London from Nigeria when they were teenagers. And they grew up speaking English because in Nigeria, the school system is such that if you go to school, it's all in English. So from day one of your schooling, you learn English. So everyone that goes to school speaks English. All your exams are in English, you're taught in English. So they both came here as teenagers to work. I I went to school, primary and secondary school were both Catholic schools. And it's actually at secondary school, which is where you are from age 11 to 16, is where I decided to learn Spanish. So you're given a choice from ages 11 till 14 to study either to study either French or Spanish. And I chose Spanish because it's two reasons. One, I was always very into dance. I enjoyed dance. And I think much like the African culture, there's a very, that dance and music is very deep rooted in Spanish or in the Latin world in a way in which it wasn't quite the case in France, or at least I wasn't familiar with it. It was certainly more explicit in the Spanish speaking world. So that was one aspect. And the other is, in my school, there were a group of girls who I was really good friends with, and they were all Colombian. So they were all Colombian families who'd come to the UK. And I always wanted to learn Spanish so that when I visited their houses, I could speak to their mums, because their parents only ever spoke in Spanish. So it was always, to have a conversation with my friends' mums, and we were all together, they had to translate. So I knew some Spanish words. So when the time came to choose which language I wanted to learn, I chose Spanish because I wanted to be able to communicate more, and be part of this, what felt like an exclusive club when I was a youngster. After school, I went on to college. I continued to study Spanish with various other subjects. I always knew I wanted to be something in finance, although initially it was accounting I was interested in. I had some exposure to the world of finance, the world of buying and selling bonds or equities, the world of financial markets, and I was very interested in that. So I decided to go into that world. And I'll be honest, there isn't really much excitement between then and where I am today, except for the fact that
you met me.
I met John. So John was my client. So I'm a salesperson, as I mentioned earlier, and in that role, I look after London-based insurance companies and pension funds who want to buy or to invest in emerging markets. And John worked for a company who were an investor who wanted to buy emerging market bonds, or wanted to invest in emerging markets. And so we met each other through work, and we became very good friends. And from very good friends, we became even better friends. So I think that's about it from me.
Yeah. So obviously the world's an amazing place right now. Lots of very unusual and different things going on. So feel free to ask us about life in the UK under COVID, life in the financial markets under COVID, anything else you may want to ask us. Although I will say that I refuse to answer Giuliana any questions about her thesis last week, because it's way too complicated for me.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know if you watched the video about my thesis
I did.
presentation.
Yes.
Well, yeah, it's kind of difficult to understand. Actually, we studied this topic over 2 years with my team.
Yeah.
And it is very interesting because I'm not that kind of business person, but I'm that kind of teaching person. Yes. So I
Okay.
really like the pedagogy, teaching, and inspiring others, especially children. So it's very interesting. And in terms of that, yeah, uh, the thing is that I try to resume a very brief explanation because there are a lot of things I missed in order for the guys to understand. But the thing is that it is simple. It is like working with the language in context. Yes.
Yes.
So
Correct.
the pragmatics, as Mary was saying, yes, it is very important, for example, for your Chinese worker. Yes. So like you gave him words, business words, but with a context in which this person has to put, okay, this word goes here and those goes there, because it is very important to link always the vocabulary with a context. Yes. Anyway,
Yeah.
you are not going to express yourself in the right way.
Exactly.
So thanks for asking.
No
And
problem.
yeah, I'm presenting this in November. And later, if I have the video, maybe I could send you the whole video in order for you to see the
All right.
presentation, the
Sure. Please
official
do.
one.
Okay, David.
Yes.
Please.
Now,
Please do.
David, he wants to say something. David, please, your turn.
Yeah. Hello. Do you listen to me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. First of all, thank you for being here, Mary and John. I'm really glad that you made it, and I'm glad that I made it as well. I've been listening to you a lot, and actually, I'm a businessman. I study business administration, and I'm about to graduate next year. So I'm really into the financial markets world, and I'm happy to know all these things that you have been talking about these last minutes. And basically, the question that I want to ask is how how to start, because I've heard that you made it, like for example, you, John, just had like your brother got you 2 interviews that helped you, and you didn't even have a degree, so it was awful, wonderful, like the fact that you could get in. So basically, I'm really glad that you did it, and I would love to know how is it like for beginners, how to start, really, because that's my question, because I love these financial markets, and in the university I've been learning a lot, but I know the corporate world is completely another world, so I would like to know that.
I would
I
like
think
to say something to you. You should send me your CVI.
All right.
I think David, Mary has a view on this, and so do I. My view is quite a simple one, and you know, I worked in Blue Bay for 18 years, and it became a very significant asset manager. And I had guys joining me from Oxford University, from Cambridge University, from Yale, and I promise you, they didn't have a clue about life, about interacting with people, about social structures. Academically, they were brilliant, but actually in the corporate world, they were useless. And so I think there's the way to get in is, in my opinion, take whatever you can. If you look at, for example, the world of asset managers, and Mary can tell you about banks, there's all sorts of areas where you can make an entrance into the firm. It doesn't have to be the glory, Wall Street, mine, yours, shouting, screaming, the glamour. It can be the guy that goes and settles that trade. Once I said to somebody, I'm buying it or selling it, somebody has to do the hard work behind. And that somebody is doing the hard work behind inevitably has contact with you and can build a relationship with you as a trader. And then suddenly when you need someone, when you need a junior, the first place you'll go to look is the people within the firm that have shown some aptitude and some ability. So my advice has always been to anybody that wants to get into the to the financial world, get into wherever you can. Once you're in, make your mark. Don't aim to be Gordon Gekko on day one. You know, aim to be Gordon Gekko's number 3 helper who cleans his shoes, who gets his coffee, but can make him notice you and eventually move up the ladder. I was very lucky that it was a different time, but even now, I still see people within the financial world that move into the operations department, the department that settles everything, and make their way through to trading. However, what I would say to you is that just because you're not in the glamour part of the business, it doesn't mean you can't make a very nice life. Within the financial markets in London, if you're working within a bank, regardless of whereabouts within the bank you are, I can guarantee you, you're actually having a nice life. And the opportunities are enormous. So my advice is get into where you can, don't aim too high, aim low and work to get high.
Well, the
Okay,
first
thank
thing
you
I
very
would
much.
say, David, is make sure you take Anna up on her offer and send her your CV. Because I think the number one way in which people get into our industry is through recommendations or through somebody putting your name forward. So knowing someone helps. Knowing someone who is already in the industry who can help guide you towards the right role or the right opportunity, because otherwise you're applying online with thousands of other people also applying online, and the competition is fierce and everybody is trying to tick the same boxes. So degree from the right university, so qualifications and work experience and extracurricular activities. So your goal is to stand out, but sometimes I think the best way is having somebody recommend you or somebody put you forward for an opportunity.
Okay.
Okay,
Anna?
thank you very much.
I have a question for you, John.
Yes.
I didn't understand your new business, and I
Okay.
didn't understand why you get out of the blue. How's the name of the brokerage? How do you get out of that place? It looks so nice, and you were so happy there.
I think. Well, first of all, I think we're about to run out of time. Ernesto, do we need to go to number 2?
Okay, we have 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
No, 2 minutes.
Okay, so Anna, I was the asset manager I was working at was very successful. They were bought by the Royal Bank of Canada, and the Royal Bank of Canada had started to impose some slightly different management, and so the family that I remembered for 17 years was changing somewhat. Also, being in one place for 17 and a half years is a long time. And this was an opportunity to go and do something different. I'm a little bit older, but still young enough to give something one more challenge. And I felt that the world was changing in the asset management way. And in fact, now outsourcing is certainly a byword of finance. It's very much the vogue to be outsourcing different functions. And were it not for COVID, I actually had one fund that was looking to sign up with me to actually start using my service. And it's only that COVID came along and asset managers' focus has been survival.
So you're going to be like a family office, something like that?
No. So effectively, if you take an asset manager has the execution desk. So the fund manager makes a decision to buy or sell something. The execution desk does that trade, which is what I did. I ran the execution for Blue Bay. My idea is they take the execution function, outsource it. So the fund manager now just sends the order to the outsource desk, and you execute on behalf of the fund manager. From a MiFID point of view, we have all sorts of regulatory pressures here. We have the MiFID in the UK and Europe, which is pressurizing.
Let's go.